Teen is mocked in trial, but shocks the court with his words. The courtroom was packed that morning. Reporters whispered, spectators leaned forward, and at the center of it all sat a teenager who was never supposed to win. His name was Daniel Carter, 17 years old. He wasn't wealthy. He wasn't powerful. He was just a boy from a broken home, standing trial against men who carried titles, influence, and reputations polished to shine. The judge peered down at him with an almost mocking smirk. The lawyers whispered among themselves, some even laughing quietly. To them, Daniel was nothing but a naive kid, a lost cause who didn't belong in such a serious court. As the trial began, every word spoken about him cut deeper. The prosecution painted him as a liar, a troublemaker, a boy too poor, too uneducated, too insignificant to matter. When Daniel tried to speak, the courtroom erupted in chuckles. "He's just a child," someone muttered. "Let's get this over with," another whispered. And with every laugh, every dismissive glance, Daniel's shoulders sank lower. But what no one realized was that the boy they mocked was carrying a truth powerful enough to shatter their world. For weeks, Daniel had been dismissed, silenced, even ridiculed. But he never stopped writing, scribbling in the margins of a battered notebook he carried everywhere. In that notebook were his words, his story, and his evidence. His mother, who had passed away just a year before, used to tell him, "Your voice is your weapon, Daniel. Don't ever let anyone take that away." And now, standing alone in front of men who wanted him destroyed, Daniel clutched that notebook as though it were a shield. The prosecutor sneered, "Mr. Carter, do you even understand the seriousness of this trial? You're wasting the court's time." The crowd laughed again. Daniel's knuckles tightened around the notebook. He stood slowly, his voice trembling at first but gathering strength. "Maybe you think I'm just a kid. Maybe you think my words don't matter. But I'm here because of what you did. And I'm not leaving until everyone knows the truth." The courtroom fell silent. One by one, Daniel began to read. His words weren't polished legal arguments. They weren't the sophisticated speeches of seasoned lawyers. They were raw, human, and painfully real. He spoke about nights spent alone in the dark, about the lies told to silence him, about the people who thought power meant they could crush anyone beneath them. And then, he revealed what he had written down for months. Letters, conversations, and even hidden documents that proved the very people mocking him were guilty of corruption. The laughter stopped. The judge shifted uncomfortably. The prosecutor's face went pale. For the first time, Daniel wasn't the boy being mocked. He was the boy holding all the power. The courtroom had turned upside down. Gasps filled the air as Daniel's words struck like thunder. The judge, once smug and untouchable, now leaned forward nervously. The powerful men in suits, the ones who believed they could never be challenged, were suddenly scrambling. And then Daniel said the words that would echo long after the trial ended. "You called me weak. You laughed at me. But the truth doesn't care how old I am. It doesn't care how rich you are. The truth only cares about what's right. And today, the truth is finally being heard." His voice shook the silence. For a moment, the court was frozen. Reporters scribbled furiously, spectators whispered in disbelief, and the once mocking crowd stared at the teenager with wide, humbled eyes. Even the judge, unable to hide his unease, finally muttered the words no one expected. "Mr. Carter, it seems we owe you an apology." Daniel sat down, his chest rising and falling with the weight of years of pain finally released. In that instant, the powerless became powerful. The boy mocked for being small had forced giants to tremble. And the courtroom, once filled with laughter at his expense, now sat in reverent silence. But just when justice seemed close, the story took a darker turn. As Daniel left the courthouse, clutching his notebook like armor, a black car pulled up beside him. The window rolled down slowly. Inside sat a figure with cold eyes, a voice dripping with menace. "You've embarrassed powerful men today, Daniel. Do you really think they'll let you walk away from this?" The car door cracked open. Daniel froze. His victory in court was real. But outside, in the shadows of power and corruption, a bigger battle was only beginning. They thought they silenced him. They thought they broke him. But Daniel Carter was just getting started. The courtroom had fallen silent after Daniel Carter's words. He was no longer just a teenager. He was the boy who had dared to expose corruption in broad daylight. But victories like his come with a price. The very next morning, Daniel woke up to headlines. Teen exposes corruption in courtroom showdown. 17-year-old turns trial upside down. On the surface, it looked like triumph. People cheered him online. Reporters chased him for interviews. To strangers, Daniel had become a symbol of courage. But behind the praise, shadows were moving. The same powerful men who mocked him now saw him as a threat. And they weren't about to let a boy, barely a man, destroy the empire they had built. Started small. A phone call late at night. Silence on the line, except for the sound of someone breathing. Then came the letters, slipped under his door. No return address. Just a single message scrawled in black ink. Daniel tried to brush it off. But then his father lost his job. Suddenly, the factory where he had worked for years claimed they no longer had space. His little sister Emily came home in tears, saying a black car had followed her from school. And Daniel? He began noticing faces. At the cafe, at the bus stop, even outside his own house. Strangers who didn't belong watching him without blinking. The boy who had once been laughed at in court was now being hunted in silence. The truth had set him free in the courtroom. But outside, the truth had painted a target on his back. One evening, Daniel found an envelope waiting on his doorstep. Inside was a single sheet of paper and $10,000 in cash. The note read, "Stop talking. Walk away. This is your only chance." Daniel stared at the money, his hands trembling. He thought of Emily. He thought of his father, now unemployed. He thought of the endless nights his family had struggled, and how much easier life could be if he just stayed quiet. And for a moment, just a moment, he considered it. His mother's voice echoed in his mind. "Your voice is your weapon, Daniel. Don't ever let anyone take that away." He clenched the money in his fists. Then he tore the note in half. Daniel wasn't going to be bought. Not now. Not ever. But the moment he made that choice, the war against him became more dangerous than he ever imagined. Daniel wasn't completely alone. A young reporter named Rachel Myers had been in the courtroom the day he spoke. She saw what others missed. The way Daniel shook before standing. The way his voice cracked before it grew strong. She recognized something rare. Courage. Rachel approached him, her eyes burning with determination. "Daniel," she said, "they're going to come after you. But if you let me tell your story, really tell it, we can make sure the whole world is watching." At first, Daniel hesitated. Could he trust her? Was she just another person chasing a headline? But when the threats worsened, when his family's windows were smashed in the middle of the night, Daniel realized Rachel wasn't just an ally. She might be the only person who could keep him safe. Together, they started piecing together everything. Documents, recordings, witness statements. They uncovered a web of corruption that stretched further than Daniel ever imagined. Judges, developers, even politicians with smiling faces and dark secrets. And as Daniel dug deeper, he realized something terrifying. What happened in that courtroom was only the beginning. Late one night, Daniel and Rachel met at an empty library to organize the evidence. They worked quietly. Stacks of papers spread out under dim light. Rachel whispered, "If we release this, Daniel, it won't just be a trial. It'll be the biggest scandal this city has ever seen." Daniel nodded, determination in his eyes. "They tried to silence me once. They won't do it again." But as they packed their files, Rachel froze. She glanced out the library's tall glass window. A black SUV sat parked across the street. The engine running, headlights glowing. Daniel's chest tightened. The library door creaked open. Heavy footsteps echoed through the silence. Rachel whispered, "Daniel, we're not alone." The screen cuts to black. They mocked him. They threatened him. And now, they're hunting him. What Daniel Carter doesn't know is that the real fight hasn't even begun. The black SUV outside the library wasn't just watching. It was waiting. Inside, Daniel Carter and Rachel Myers froze, hearts pounding as the door creaked open. The silence of the library was broken only by the echo of heavy boots. "Daniel?" Rachel whispered, clutching the stack of papers. "We have to move. Now." They slipped through the back exit, rushing into the night. Daniel's chest heaved as he clutched the folder of evidence. The proof that could take down the men who had mocked him, threatened him, tried to silence him. But the shadows were tightening, and every step forward was another step into danger. The next morning, Rachel suggested they meet one of her contacts, an attorney who had experience with whistleblower cases. She swore he could protect them, file motions, and ensure their evidence reached the right hands. Daniel wanted to believe her. After all, Rachel had risked everything to help him. But when they arrived at the downtown office, something felt wrong. The lights were dim. The receptionist's desk was empty, and sitting in the office chair waiting wasn't an attorney. It was the developer's attorney, the same man who had whispered threats outside the courthouse weeks earlier. His red silk tie caught the light as he smirked, tapping a finger against a briefcase. Rachel froze, her face drained of color. "Daniel," she whispered. I didn't know. I swear, I didn't." But Daniel's gut twisted. Had Rachel been tricked? Or worse, had she betrayed him? The attorney leaned forward, voice low and venomous. "You've made quite the mess, Mr. Carter. But this ends tonight." Two men stepped from the shadows, faces cold, movements sharp. Daniel clutched his folder tighter. His voice trembled, but his eyes burned with defiance. "You can scare me. You can even hurt me. But the truth's already out there. People know now. You can't bury this." The attorney's smirk widened. "Oh, Daniel, you think people care? Stories fade. Headlines disappear. But power? Power lasts forever." Before Daniel could move, the men grabbed him. His papers spilled across the floor like broken glass. Scattered, torn, lifeless. Rachel screamed, shoving one of the men, but she was thrown aside. Daniel's arms were pinned, his breath crushed beneath their grip. For the first time since he had spoken in court, Daniel felt truly powerless. The attorney crouched down, staring him in the eye. "You should have taken the money. Now your story ends where it began, in silence." Daniel's mind raced. His family, his little sister Emily. He couldn't let this be the end. As they dragged him toward the SUV outside, Daniel's voice cracked through the night. "Rachel, don't let them win." But Rachel wasn't done. Stumbling to her feet, she snatched her phone from her pocket, hands shaking, eyes wild. She wasn't recording. She was live-streaming. The red light blinked, and the world began to watch. Rachel screamed into the camera. "They're taking him, the same people he exposed. They're trying to silence Daniel Carter right now." The men froze. The attorney's smirk cracked. Thousands of people watched in real time as Daniel was shoved into the SUV. Comments flooded the screen. "Is this real? Oh my God. Someone call the police. We stand with Daniel." For the first time, the darkness that had thrived in silence was dragged into the light. The livestream forced their hand. The men panicked, shoving Daniel into the back seat before peeling out into the night. But Rachel was still recording, running after the car, screaming his name. "Daniel, hold on." The world watched as headlights disappeared into the dark. The feed cut to black. And in that moment, Daniel Carter went from a courtroom curiosity to a national headline. Narrator haunting, building suspense. Hours later, the SUV pulled into an abandoned warehouse on the edge of town. Daniel was dragged out, his wrists bound, his body trembling but unbroken. The attorney's voice echoed in the empty space. "You wanted to speak the truth? Fine. Speak it now. Let's see if anyone is still listening." Daniel's jaw tightened. His voice was hoarse, but steady. "They are. They're all listening. And when they see what you've done, it's over for you." The attorney's smile returned, cold and cruel. "Then you'd better hope they don't turn away." The camera cuts to a dim shot of Daniel, kneeling on the warehouse floor, a single light bulb swaying overhead. The boy who spoke truth to power is now a prisoner of the very men he exposed. The world is watching, but will it be enough to save him? The warehouse was cold. Damp concrete, rusted beams. A single light bulb swayed overhead, casting Daniel Carter in shadow. His wrists were bound, his body bruised, but his eyes unbroken. The developer's attorney circled him like a predator, red silk tie flashing as he whispered, "You think people will save you? That live stream was noise, nothing more. By morning, the world will move on." But Daniel said nothing. His silence was not fear. It was defiance. Because deep down, he knew the world was still watching. Across town, Rachel Myers hadn't stopped running. Her phone battery was nearly dead, but her live stream had already gone viral. Millions had seen Daniel dragged away. The comments were still flooding in, hashtags exploding across platforms. Hashtag Free Daniel. Hashtag Justice for Carter. Hashtag The Truth is on Trial. Rachel's voice trembled as she recorded another video, this time directly addressing the world. They've taken him. The same people he exposed in court, the developer, the judge, the sheriff, they're all in this. If we don't act, they'll silence him forever. For the first time in her career, Rachel wasn't just reporting the news. She was the news, and the world was listening. The story tore through the town like wildfire. Some people dismissed it as conspiracy, as another teen exaggeration. But others had seen too much corruption to doubt it. Outside City Hall, protesters gathered, holding handmade signs. "We believe Daniel. No more silence. Truth matters." But inside, the judge and the developer held an emergency meeting with the sheriff. Their empire was crumbling. The judge's voice cracked with rage. "Find that boy. End the circus before it destroys us all." The sheriff adjusted his badge, sweat dripping down his temple. "He's already destroyed us. The people won't stay quiet this time." The developer slammed his fist on the table. "Then let's make sure he never talks again." Back in the warehouse, Daniel sat in silence. Hours passed. His body ached, but his mind sharpened. One deputy, young, nervous, barely older than Daniel himself, stood guard. His flashlight shook as he shifted his weight. Daniel looked up. His voice was low but steady. "You know this is wrong. You swore an oath. To protect, not to cover up their crimes." The deputy's jaw tightened. He didn't respond. But Daniel saw it, the crack in his armor. The seed of doubt. Sometimes the truth doesn't need to be shouted. It only needs to be spoken. Rachel wasn't done fighting. She tracked Daniel's phone signal, desperate for a lead. The live stream had caught the SUV's license plate. With help from online followers, she traced it to a property outside town, an old warehouse tied to the developer's family. Rachel's heart pounded as she reached the building. From the shadows, she aimed her phone's camera, whispering into the live feed. "This is it. He's inside." The comments exploded. Some begged her to call the police. Others warned her to run. But Rachel didn't run. Not this time. Inside the warehouse, the attorney returned, papers in hand. He threw them at Daniel's feet. "Sign these. A confession. You admit you fabricated everything. You admit you lied." Daniel looked down at the papers, then back up at the attorney. His lips curled into the faintest smile. "You don't understand, do you? The truth doesn't need me anymore. It's already out there." The attorney's smirk faltered. Rage boiled beneath his calm exterior. "Then you'll die with it." He raised his hand, signal enough. The deputies stepped forward. But before they could act, the warehouse doors burst open. A sea of flashing lights cut through the dark. Reporters, activists, even federal investigators swarmed the warehouse. Rachel's live stream had led them straight to it. The young deputy lowered his gun, dropping it to the floor. "I won't do this anymore," he said, voice shaking. The sheriff barked orders, but his own men hesitated. The tide had turned, and then cameras flashed. The attorney's face twisted in fury. The judge, pale and trembling. The developer caught in the act. The men who had laughed in court were now prisoners of the truth. Daniel was freed, his wrists bleeding from the ropes. Rachel rushed to his side, tears streaming down her face. "You did it," she whispered. "No," Daniel said, his voice cracking. "We did." The cameras swarmed him. Reporters shouted questions. Protesters outside cheered. For the first time, Daniel Carter wasn't mocked. He was believed. The courthouse that had once humiliated him now became the stage for his redemption. Weeks later, the trial began. This time, the seats were full again, but for a different reason. The town wanted to see justice served. The attorney, the developer, the judge, the sheriff, all four faced charges: corruption, conspiracy, kidnapping, attempted murder. Daniel sat in the front row, no longer the defendant but the witness. His testimony was clear, powerful, undeniable. And when the verdict was read, guilty on all counts, the gallery erupted in cheers. Justice had been mocked once. Now it had the final word. Daniel Carter wasn't a hero because he was fearless. He was a hero because he was afraid, but refused to stay silent. He proved something timeless. The truth may be mocked. It may be buried. It may even be kidnapped. But the truth always finds a way out. Months later, Daniel returned to the library, the same place where his journey had begun. He walked the quiet aisles, running his hand along the spines of books, breathing in the silence. But as he reached the back corner, he froze. On the table where he once studied sat a folder, weathered, leather, just like the one Samuel Wright had carried years before. Inside, documents, names, deals, secrets, and a single note: "The war isn't over. It never was." Daniel's hand shook as he read the final line. "Now it's your turn." They thought justice had been served. But in truth, this was only the beginning of a much darker fight. Subscribe to our channel, hit the notification button, like and comment for more Hidden Struggles content.